Hello. In our previous video, we walked through importing our Nutanix Cloud Native Calm blueprint into your local Calm instance and deployed a fully functional cloud native application. Today's video, we're just going to be diving into the architecture of that blueprint. So here we are in Prism Central within Calm, and we have our blueprint canvas pulled up. We see on the right side, we have the variables that we set up last time. So I'm not going to spend much time there. They should be familiar at this point. First, I'm going to go to the Era server. This is our Era server that's stood up on our Prism element cluster. It's obviously an existing machine since we're not standing it up here in the blueprint. And we're connecting to it via the Era IP variable we set last time. Note, we do not have the check login upon create selected, as we don't actually have to SSH into this Era server. We're just making API calls against it. Changing over to the package install, we've got 6 different tasks here that are all making API calls to the Era server. And most of them are also setting variables. So we see here it's getting the cluster ID. On the next one, we're getting some various profile IDs, as we can see down here. This third task, we are setting the SLA ID and the database name. This is an interesting one. This is where we're actually provisioning the database. We're using all the variables we just set and plugging them into the payload, and then making the API call and getting the operation ID so we can then monitor it. So this task is monitoring the deployment. And finally, we're doing another API call to get the database info. The most relevant thing here is the database server IP. Because if we come over to this machine, we see that same DB server IP. So we're adding as an existing machine, but Era is doing the machine creation, and then Calm is connecting to it via that IP. And Calm will take care of all the dependencies and make sure the ordering is correct automatically for you. On this one, we are checking the login, as we want to verify that we can log into that machine. If we can't, then something likely went wrong and we'd want to error out. So for the package install on this one, we are just doing the migration job. If you've been following along in this series, this should be pretty familiar for you. We just need to seed this database with initial application data, and that way we actually have a storefront when we first launch it. Next, we have the object storage bucket. Notice here it's again an existing machine. We're tying it into our bucket's IP variable, and we don't have the check login upon create selected, as we're not SSHing into it. We're just using HTTP requests to access it. And finally, we have our Kubernetes piece. So we see here we have our Kubernetes deployment, the containers, and the service. So all of these should look pretty familiar if you've been following along. We have our deployment here with our selector and labels. We have our container, which has our Oscar Jet container image and various things like our container port to access it, and our service, which actually exposes these pods to our end users. The nice thing about Calm is it gives you both the option of having the text fields like this, or you can switch over to a JSON or YAML editor and do that if you're more comfortable with that. In both sides, no matter where you update, the other side will get updated automatically. So there you have it. That's the full architecture of this Calm blueprint, which deploys a fully functional cloud native application. Thanks for your time today.